Hey folks, today we're going to take a look at a game that is currently seeking funding on Kickstarter. That game is called MourneQuest, and it's from Backspindle Games. Now, if you like what you see throughout the rest of this preview video, I'm going to encourage you to go to the official Kickstarter project page. You can do that by following the link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. Now, MourneQuest is a cooperative game. You and the other players take control of heroes from Irish folklore. You're basically something akin to leprechauns or the fair folk, and you're just trying to defend your home called the Mourn, which has been a peaceful place, but now this evil, monstrous spirit known as the Shimnivore is on the verge of breaking out of its mountain prison, and in the meantime, while it's working on that, it has taken control of these other spirits known as nightmares, who were once not so bad, but are now also on the verge of awakening and just wreaking havoc while waiting for its master to arrive. And it also has all these other like little minions called bog beans that are really going to try to make your life miserable as well. So what you need to do is, number one, protect the walls of the Mourn that are keeping the Shimnivore imprisoned, and then finally defeat the Shimnivore upon its awakening. But in the meantime, you just need to survive and hold out and get as strong as possible. Does that sound complicated? Well, it's really not that complicated. So let me go ahead and give you a brief look at how the game is played with a prototype version of the game. So what you're going to see here is actually a very nice prototype. So many of the things that you see will be in the final version, but some things may change slightly, some rules might change. Just bear that in mind. But in any event, then we're going to come back and we will discuss it further. MourneQuest is a cooperative game for up to 4 players. Each player is a hero from the Mourns trying to save the land from the evil Shimnivore and his nightmare allies. To win, the heroes need to protect the Mourn wall and fully destroy the Shimnivore before it escapes. But they will lose if any of the heroes are killed or if the Shimnivore manages to destroy one section of the wall. Start the game by laying out the pieces of the board representing the Mourns. Discs representing the nightmares are placed at each cardinal direction, with the nightmares' figurines on top of them facing away. The discs have 2 important aspects. First, it tells you which 5 charms are necessary for the heroes to gather in order to cast it out. Second, it has a meter that tells the hero how much time they have left before the nightmare awakens. One of the first 3 ticks on the meter, depending on the difficulty you wish to play at, is aligned with a keystone space and its arrow on the board, and during the game the disc will be rotated to show time running out. Every player chooses a hero to play as and takes their card. The card lists 3 attributes: courage, strength, and magic, their life points, and their backpack space, which is where they'll keep their charms and determines how many they can hold at a time. They each also have a unique ability that can help during the game, but can only be used 3 times, and hence will also have 3 skill tokens to keep track of that. Take their figure and place it on one of the starting points of the board near the corners, which can also be used to regain life points during the game. Cards for the Nightmares and Shimnivore are laid out nearby to remind you of their powers should they awaken and you have to fight them. They each have a different special ability and attributes, courage, strength, and magic, which change with the phases of the moon. There are also cards for the minions that heroes will have to fight during the game, known as bog beans, which come in 3 nasty varieties. Figures are kept nearby for now. There are 2 decks of cards. Equipment cards can be gained from nexus points around the board, and they can be attached to heroes to increase their attributes by sliding them underneath the character cards and adding their bonus to the original score. However, they can only have 1 equipment in each slot at a time. At the start of the game, after shuffling, the top card is flipped off the equipment deck and starts the surplus pile. Unfortunately, mixed in with the equipment deck during setup are hag cards. When drawn, they must be read aloud and the player must follow the instructions. While not necessarily horrendously bad, they force you to reshuffle or swap the equipment deck and its surplus at inopportune times. The other deck is the relic deck. These can be gained from finding magical pots or trading charms for them at trading houses. Relics are very powerful magical items, and while some are strictly beneficial and will help the heroes, some are only randomly good and a few are outright bad for you if drawn. You also need to set up the encounter bag with encounter tiles, which are drawn from empty nexus spaces at the end of each enemy phase. There are 3 levels of tiles, and only level 1 tiles are in the bag at the start of the game. When the heroes cast out or defeat a nightmare, or run out of tiles in the bag, or when a nightmare escapes onto the board, another set of tiles will be added to the bag, and then again for the third set of tiles if one of the conditions is met again. These tiles can either spawn enemies, move existing enemies, get the player equipment, or place magical pots on the board. A moon marker with the white moon facing up is placed on the blood moon space of the moon track. The moon moves one space at the end of every hero turn. When the moon goes around the track once, it's flipped to its blood side and the enemies become more difficult. When it completes a second go around, the final battle begins. Finally, make stocks of the other components near the board, including the different types of charms, wound markers, etc., and the various dice that the game uses, including yellow compass dice and red, orange, green, and gray combat dice. Then, you can begin the game. Every round of the game is broken down into 2 phases. First, the hero phase. One player starts and will take 3 actions with several different options for spending those actions. They can either move down one of the Mourn pathways to the next space, pick up a charm from one of the designated caches on the board, deposit a charm onto a nightmare disc if they're on the keystone near it, pick up a card from the surplus deck, give an equipment card to another player in the same space, regain a life point from a starting point, trade in charms at a trading post at the cost of 2 identical charms to gain 1 charm of your choice, or 3 of any charm to gain a relic, and finally they can attack a bog bean or a nightmare. Combat is simple. Each bog bean and nightmare has 3 ability scores just like the heroes. When a hero confronts a level 1 or 2 bog bean, they must choose 1 ability and challenge it once successfully to win. Level 3 bog beans, however, must be challenged successfully twice for 2 different abilities, while nightmares must be challenged successfully 3 times, once for each ability. Players need to roll a die and add it to the relevant ability score and either equal or exceed the monster's score. Remember, though, that the monster's score gets higher or lower depending on the phases of the moon on the moon track, though heroes get double effects on their rolls if it's the rare blue moon phase. If they manage to successfully defeat a bog bean, it drops a charm that the hero then collects. Heroes start off with a weak gray dice to roll, but can use the green, orange, and red die together with the gray die when they've defeated 1, 2, or 3 nightmares, respectively. Dice have faces that can deal up to 6 damage, and the better dice have faces that can double dice results or even outright win the battle. But rolling 1 or 2 of the blank fail faces means that they lose automatically. Losing against a bog bean means losing either a charm or equipment that you already hold, or, barring those, a life point. But nightmares always take a life point for losing. Heroes also have free actions, including drawing a card from the top of the equipment deck when at a Nexus, drawing a relic when at a magical pot token, and then also using a relic as a free action. After their actions, before ending their turn, a player must move the moon marker 1 space down the track, then roll a yellow compass die. If it comes up as a cardinal direction, the nightmare disc at that direction moves 1 tick towards doom. If it's blank, nothing happens. If it's a compass star, a compass token is placed in the center of the board. When 8 of these are accrued, all 4 discs move 1 tick, and the tokens are then reset. If the moon track is already on its second go-around, the players each must roll 2 compass dice on their turn instead of 1. Then, the next player in clockwise order takes their turn, and so on until each player has gone. If, during the hero turn, the final needed charm is placed on a nightmare, the nightmare is removed from the game and replaced with a MourneQuest talisman, which can later be discarded to allow for 1 free reroll of any 1 die. When all the heroes have gone in a round, the enemy phase begins. First is movement. Bog beans already on the board move 1 space towards the nearest hero. Nightmares move 2 spaces. Then, nightmares activate their evil power right before all bog beans and nightmares attack if they're in a space with a hero. Enemies always use their strongest ability, and the player must roll their dice and add the total to their courage ability. If it's equal or greater, the attack is defended against, and the bog beans will drop their charm. If it's less, the attack hits, and you either lose a charm, lose an equipment, or lose life points. The final part of the enemy's phase is refilling empty Nexus points with tiles from the bag. While some of these tiles will put out more bog beans or force existing ones to move again, others will place magical pots or equipment. After the enemy phase, a new round begins with the hero phase. The game continues like this until the moon has completed its second go-around on the track. That's when the Shimnivore breaks out and arrives in the center of the board to signify the final battle. Its only goal is to attack the 4 keystones in each direction, and if it can destroy one of them, it can escape. Any nightmares not already cast out or defeated will now awaken and roam the board, possibly knocking heroes off their keystone and back to their starting locations if they spawn on top of them. Bog beans already in play also continue to be a threat. The Shimnivore cannot be attacked until all nightmares and bog beans are defeated. Final battle rounds are structured a little differently. The first thing that must happen at the start of each round is rolling a compass die to determine the direction of the Shimnivore's attack. If the result is a compass star, the Shimnivore will not attack and will instead howl and knock any hero on the keystone in that direction back onto that area's nightmare disk, and it will take the hero 2 action points to get back to the keystone. On a blank, nothing happens, but if one of the directions is rolled, the Shimnivore rotates to that point and attacks. If the keystone wall space is empty, the Shimnivore rolls the gray die. On a blank failface or dandelion, nothing happens. On any other result, the wall is damaged and a damage token is placed on it. If the wall was already damaged in that area, a successful attack means the wall section crumbles and the Shimnivore escapes and the players all lose. If a bog bean was in that space, it's chased off the board and the Shimnivore continues its attack. If a nightmare was in that space, nothing happens. And if a hero is in that space, it still attacks using its strongest ability. If the hero defends successfully, nothing happens. If the hero fails, he loses a life point and is knocked back onto the nightmare disk in his direction. After the Shimnivore attacks, the start player goes and takes his 3 actions, then moves the moon marker. Then the Shimnivore attacks again, then the next player goes, etc. until the enemy phase where bog beans and nightmares can act. On their turn, a hero can attack the Shimnivore from a wall space in the same way combat always works, by choosing an ability and challenging, bearing in mind the current moon phase. To win, the players must defeat the Shimnivore once in each ability before he can destroy a section of wall and escape. It is also possible for heroes to repair sections of the wall that have already been damaged. To do this, either they'll need a very powerful relic that will let them do that, or they will need to move onto the space and use 3 granite charms that they may have collected to repair the wall manually. In any event, if they can stave off defeat and defeat the Shimnivore themselves, they will win the game. That is MourneQuest. One of the first things that you notice about MourneQuest is how it blends its theme together with its components, with its artwork, and with the very actions that you take in the game. Not many games can actually do that. You have a theme, but it just feels pasted on. Doesn't really connect with the mechanics that much. In this game, you and the other players working cooperatively genuinely feel like there is this massive evil force coming in, and you've got to do everything you can to push it back. Now, for much of the game, that just means fighting back against its minions, some of which the nightmares are very powerful, and so you have this ever-present threat pushing you forward. But then you also have to be worrying about getting strong, because you're not strong enough by the time the Shimnivore comes out. You're not going to be able to defeat it, or while you're taking the time to defeat it, maybe you are protecting yourselves, but it's ripping down those walls, and it only needs to destroy one of the sections. So you really have this constant, ever-present threat that is weighing over you. And so in that regard, and because of the way the turns of the game are structured, where you just quickly take your actions and go, and you have your very clearly defined goals, because of all that, the game moves very quickly. You're not literally lingering, which I think can be a problem in many cooperative games, especially in games where players don't take their turn simultaneously. You're kind of waiting. And this game goes very, very quickly because there's only so much you can do. This is why I said that the game it feels complicated. It looks like there's a lot going on, and there is a lot going on. But what you can actually do on your turn falls into just several different categories. And while you have several options, they're pretty straightforward. What do you need to do? You need to go and shut down the nightmares as quickly as you can before they awaken, because that's just going to make your life more miserable. Okay, you failed in doing that. So now what do you need to do? Get the best equipment you possibly can and go and fight them. Okay, there's a bog bean in my path. Gotta fight it, gotta defeat it. At the same time, you need to be very aware of what your compatriots are doing, because it's cooperative. If they need your help, you have to go and help them. If you have to give them equipment, if you have to just get a bog bean off their tail, something like that. So it's always very obvious what you need to do. It's just that the best way to do it might not always be immediately apparent, and sometimes you do have to make very tough decisions. So the game is not very complicated to explain. It's not very complicated to set up or to teach to people. But because of the amount of decision making involved, you do feel like you have a lot of agency within the game, and there's that thematic dark threat on the horizon that keeps it going. So the game could potentially take a while, but it doesn't feel like that at the same time. Obviously, I'm playing with a prototype copy of the game, although most of what you see is going to either be final or look like it will in the final version. But you can already tell, high-quality artwork, high-quality miniatures in the final version, and so on and so forth. They just put a lot of time and effort and care into the game. So, if you like cooperative games, if you like the theme, which, while fantasy in general is not a unique theme, one based off of Irish folklore is quite a bit more unique. So if you like that as well, and if you just like games where you have a lot of equipment management and resource management, there's some RPG elements to the game. If any of that appeals to you, you don't have to take my word for any of this. You can go to the official Kickstarter project page and find out more for yourself. You can do that by following the link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. That is MourneQuest from Backspindle Games. Thank you so much for watching, and as always for supporting our sponsors. Take care.